Hello, folks, and today we are talking about DayZ 1.26 Experimental. It's just been over a week, and we're going to give you folks our thoughts about what is coming to baseline DayZ. While 1.26 did offer us a lot of new features, one of the features they're coming to the base game is the cooling and heating mechanics for food and the overhaul of the player comfort system. I can't actually talk about this system enough. I think it is a very welcome change because we've seen in the malls, the food burning your mouth is finally in the baseline of DayZ.
Absolutely. And that was, in the vanilla game, even just leaving the Namalsk aside for a second, they knew that they needed to do something with the heating and cooling mechanics between the food items and the player and whatever. And it was in their rudimentary and changed a few times over patches, but it always felt kind of janky and missing a lot of the middle pieces. So I was really pleased to see that they put some effort into kind of detailing it out a little bit. And like you said, obviously taking some cues from what was done in Namalsk, but doing it a little bit different.
One of the things I like about it so far is that I was a little bit worried about going from the frozen to even the edible, non like temperature state to all the way to cooking. Because in the malls where the food can freeze, putting it in your pocket really doesn't do anything. And it looks like baseline DayZ kind of acknowledged that putting things in your clothing would let them thaw over time.
I know that they always had that bit where you could put cooked food in your pants or something and it would heat you up. That was the whole joke about, what do you do with worms other than fish? Is you cook them and throw them in your pockets to keep you warm. Yeah, I didn't realize it went the other way. That's pretty cool.
And they overhauled the player comfort system. It is
Hmm.
actually said on the 1.26 dev stream that everyone always thought it was a Boolean, which was either on or off. But in
Right.
reality, it's for a long time always been a gradual scale of between 0 and max. So they changed up the visual indicators to represent that. So now we have, I think, up to 3 plus symbols or 2 full plus symbols before you're at max player comfort.
I was going to ask about that because I know that it had always been like the temperature, the little thermometer color, and then there was a plus if you got the heat buff. But yeah, I noticed when we were playing, like all of a sudden there was like two plus signs or something, and wasn't. I just assumed that was kind of extending that whole system.
Kind of talking about the player temperature systems and everything else, the inventory slot reduction in clothing items, and they did say some items themselves will take up less space. Before I talk about it, what do you think about this, Red?
Well, so when I saw that they were doing something with the inventory slot stuff, originally I had some of the same anxiety that I saw a lot of people posting online about, like, why are they messing with this? It's hard enough, blah, blah, blah. But then I kind of thought back and realized, oh, you know what? Like binos were always just ridiculously large. And a couple patches ago, they changed them and made them, went from 3 by 3 to 2 by 2 to where it was more reasonable. So it's like, oh, okay, that's fine, I guess. And then when we were playing, it was noticeable, but it really didn't feel like it was handicapping. And again, that's
Yeah,
also
definitely.
going to be vanilla only. So, for PC players that are playing on modded servers, it's going to have less impact.
Oh, they definitely do. All those hoarders. But I came at it from perspective. I played on 1.26 several times as a Bambi, and I never really was worried about my inventory space more than I was in 1.25. It almost felt like the size reduction on t-shirts and some of the other items, while some of them were a little bit more than I thought they would be, it didn't really affect my gameplay as a Bambi because I never was really chasing after those items that they reduced the sizes in anyway. And I often found myself even wearing tracksuits, which I never wear anyway
Right.
because there's no real purpose to them, but they have more slots than my t shirt. So I immediately switched to a tracksuit. But like,
Right.
I didn't find myself really restricted in my looting capabilities. I found myself actually wearing more different types of clothing for that progression to get better and more slots overall.
Being more of a veteran player, my missions are trying to get a backpack of some kind, like super quick, and trying to get something to be able to store a few things. So in my gameplay style, it really doesn't affect me that much. Like I said, it didn't feel constraining. It was just like, oh, it's a little bit tougher. It's just kind of fine tuning
But we're talking about these clothing changes, but we have to talk about all the new clothing.
of goofy stuff. There's a bunch of they kind of went for the not just new jackets and pants, but yeah. Good. What
Wolf.
do we got? What did you see?
Well, we now have a new wolf headdress. We have the Shemag, which came from one of our beloved modders who got hired. Can go on
Hmm.
your head or around your face. We got a winter Gorka clothing, top and bottom. We got new backpacks in winter. We got a winter ghillie, and we now have winter hunter clothes. And finally, we have a winter boonie hat with a couple of other things I think I'm missing.
Oh,
But
cool.
all this stuff shows that they're gearing up for
Yeah,
Shakal, and this stuff is going to immediately be in the base game. You're not going to have to buy the expansion to have some of these features. Like,
that bodes well that they're going to include. They've included these new winter items in the vanilla game.
yeah, and to those of you out there going, I would never wear a ghillie on Shannars or Livonia. If you actually use the ghillie and lay down properly in some of the less forested, more I would say tanned areas, the ghillie blends in actually not half bad compared to other ghillies.
No, it does. And there's actually, I just saw, I don't remember whose video it was, but it was somebody that had something on YouTube that where they went, people were kind of poo-pooing the gillies and they were like, okay, well, here, let me go in this right at the edge of this tree line, try to, spot the sniper. And you look at it and you're like, I don't know. And then you see him stand up and it was like they just emerged out of the brush.
All of this cool stuff, and we got some cute animals. We finally got the hare and the fox put into the game. What do you think, buddy?
So I've yet to see a fox in game. That was
Oh,
like the big question when I ran into other players when we were playing on official experimental was, have you seen a fox? Did you see the fox? I'm like, nah, whatever. But it was funny because I know I kept asking Hare, what do you mean? There was already a hare in game. Is this a new one? And it wasn't until you pointed out, well, no, that was only if you use the snare, you could capture a hare, but it was never an active animated animal in vanilla. So that, I mean, that's kind of cool that they finally just made it a real thing. And that's another little critter you can chase around and bonk bonk on the head and have yourself a little
oh no.
snack.
You won't catch up with it if you chase it. That thing runs quick. I'm not joking. Like, you literally run after it, and it literally looks like Bugs Bunny running away from, the other guy. Like, it's so fast that, like, you definitely have to have something. Either you have to ambush it, or you have to take it out from long range.
So you're saying they made him quick like a bunny?
Quick like a hare, you know that.
Yeah.
Just wait till you see the turtle. It's even faster. We all know the turtle won the race. Because I don't think we've seen a new creature since the bear into baseline DayZ.
No.
And now we get two animals in this update, which is really cool. And mind you, folks, the fox texture is not the final texture we're going to see, but it looks so much better, the final version that they're going to give us. You can actually see the fur standing out and all that kind of stuff. So beautiful detail on it. But the fox is playful. It's like this little cute little thing that chirps, and you can hear this thing from forever away, by the way. But like it jumps in the air, rolls on the ground, panders its little feet, but it also is quick. You can catch up with it. I end up running side by side with it for a little while during one of my experimental streams. And when you butcher animals that you freshly have hunted, the meat is warm too. So like if you put it in your
Oh,
inventory and you're freezing, it can actually help warm you up a little bit. Mind you, it doesn't last long.
that's pretty cool that they thought of that when they were considering the whole heat system or temperature system.
We have to talk about bears and wolves giving infected meat. I am for this because I definitely agree with what the dev said in the 1.26 dev stream. It felt like it was literally dinner being delivered to you. It was like DoorDash on the go to you in DayZ. If you were geared and had bullets, wolves were not a problem.
No, well, so from that standpoint, I agree. I think that they could have done some fixing by reducing the number of steaks you yield or how much of them.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say, and I think even Wobo mentioned this, is there's no indication that the meat is infected or having a problem.
Mm,
I would really like to see some sort of like worms coming out of it, or
mhm,
maybe some other kind of like nastiness to it, like maybe gangrene or something, because it does
right.
give food poisoning. Let's be honest about that. So it's not like it's like giving you some sort of like infectious illness that you've never had before. It's just your stomach does not like it, and you will eventually have to
that's what I was going to ask was if you cook it and eat it like you would any other meat, is it just a like uh tummy grumbling, the typical like if you eat food with bloody hands or something where you just get you throw some charcoal back or
You'll have to throw charcoal back to get rid of the stomach poisoning,
right.
but it will doesn't matter if you cook it; it still will give it to you.
Okay.
And by the way, folks, feedback. If you don't like it, they specifically said on the dev stream, please give them feedback on the feedback tracker about
Yes.
the affected meat so they can better know. Feedback on everything, folks. Just give feedback. If you like have something that you have constructive criticism on, give feedback. Okay. Moving on to the fishing overhaul they provided.
Yeah.
I will have to say I was stoked about this.
So, I mean, they improved the animations a little bit. Fishing was pretty rudimentary to begin with. It looks like they did fix a few things that I've encountered with trying to find the sweet spot to get the fishing prompt. I am mixed on the way that it functions now, where you hold it until, like you pointed out, there's a little bit of line noise, or you see a splash, or there's a few kind of trigger indicators, and then you let go, and that kind of sets the hook and pulls the fish in.
You have to do it with the splash. You can't just see the splash and then wait a minute.
Exactly. So it does have some timing. I mean, that does tie to real fishing that you don't just kind of throw it out there and then, oh, I have a fish, and you just pull the fish in the boat.
I feel that they went for more of the overhaul in the sound effects, like you talked
Mm,
about. You can hear the line going slack and then going tight, and if you listen to the line, you can hear the line go taut like a second before the splash comes, and you can literally on it really good. Is it perfect? Is it the best fishing that I thought it would be? No, but at the same time, it's a vastly better difference, especially with the introduction of the jig, being able to bait hooks immediately by just dragging a worm on it, and then being able to make the wooden hook as you love.
no, that was they overall. I mean, there's some things you can nitpick on, but I think overall it is an improvement. And it, like you said, it never should be like playing Bassmaster or something.
The visual settings they added to the game, being able to see further than you've ever been able to see before. I personally really like this. I think it's a great thing for people who have BVPCs to truly be able to see the beauty of the map that they're on. And the higher you go up, the more and more effect you can actually see.
DayZ is a fairly old game from a technology perspective. And if you look at the things that you can do in the newer gaming engine, having stuff that anything that's out beyond where you can normally see is just kind of not there until you start getting close. Things that they can do in DayZ to not make it just a complete performance hog, but start to approach some of those things I think are fantastic.
It does. And you speak about performance. Folks, I was able to test on 1.26 experimental live on stream. I was able to change the settings dynamically all the way to extreme. And I went from 144 frames per second, which is the refresh rate of my computer screen, down to I think it was like 70 frames per second
Oh,
with
wow.
my terrain and object detail on extreme. And I'm looking out over a hill into this big, vast area where I can see all the trees and buildings. But the fact that it is that good on my old PC, which by the way is only a 2080 Ti, tells you a lot about how well the game has optimized those view settings to work. But Red, do these settings affect or give you an advantage over others?
And I know we talked about this before, where I don't think it does because you still have the limitations for in-game objects of the what's referred to as the network bubble. So what the server is communicating to you that's there or not there. But as you pointed out, that with the change that they made, that's really only affecting things that are encoded in the map. So buildings that are in the map, the terrain that's in the map. So it's not like you're going to be able to see somebody from further away, see a player or see a base or anything like that. And, if you happen to have, just a totally supercomputer specs on your machine, it's not going to really help you any more than it would prior to 1.26. It just gives you a little bit better immersion.
And we've finally got a little bit of a weird thing we're going to talk about. It's kind of interesting because we have the ability, or we're given the ability, to climb onto things when we're in water. I don't know about you folks, but I have had plenty of times as a Bambi. I actually ran off one of the ports in, Electro or Cherno or Saventlo Yarsk, and I could not get back up. I had to swim all the way around. By that time, my clothes were fully drenched. I'm freezing. I pretty much just had given up at that point. So being able to climb up out of the water was kind of nice.
That was always and given that I do have the boat mod, so I've done a lot of stuff that is more in
You have a
water.
boat mod?
I have a boat mod, which may or may not be rendered irrelevant when 126 and the new DLC comes out. However, what I did find was water mechanics were something they did not pay a ton of attention to, because in a purely vanilla game, you're not going to spend a bunch of time out there. You may, like you said, fall off the end of a pier or something like that, but you're really not going to be navigating in the water and then having to climb back up on something for the most part.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting, and I'm pretty sure this is because of the eventual introduction of boats to the game, that they went, oh, we better spend a little bit of time dealing with these issues we never really had to deal with before because no one was out there.
Yeah. And it was actually really interesting because shortly after this update came out for experimental, people immediately found animation files for leaning over the edge of a boat and stuff like that. And then DayZ, literally the day after all of this stuff starts going on the social media, drops the boat teaser video. I would have to say, I think 1.26 update as a baseline update to the game itself actually has been very welcome to people like me who really enjoy the survival elements. But also, it seems like it's catering to the PvP. It's prepping for far more features, and it's giving all that prep to the baseline players. And I think that's a great approach from DayZ towards the player base because it shows, hey, just because we're working really hard on this DLC and we really want this to be good, doesn't mean that we forgot about the people who may not buy it right away, who may not jump on board right away or buy it ever. I would highly suggest you do so because it looks like it's going to be fantastic. But it still is nice that they thought of that.
I was gonna say with 126, like to me, this is a good update because they went in and they're doing some thoughtful things to some of the mechanics that had been very rudimentary to date. They added a few things. The animals and the new animal animations that are associated with them, I think is cool and welcome. They did add a few clothing items, but it isn't this. We've added 2 new rifles and this new, weird, I don't know, types of shoes or something that it really, it's less of the fluff, or like the face masks and stuff. I was not a big fan of those. That was just fluff. I'll be interested to see once we get the final release and the patch notes from that, what other bug fixes they've included, because there's certainly a bunch of things that have been lingering in the bug tracker, or the feedback tracker, I guess is more appropriate. So we'll see what gets included in the final release.
Remember, DayZ isn't perfect and your feedback matters. Click on the link in the feedback tracker if you have feedback to give. Well, this has been the State of Survival and our conversation on 1.26 Experimental. Thank you very much for watching, and to talk for now.
Bye-bye.